How's it going, everybody? Welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and in this episode, I'll be chatting through some early waiver wire targets here for Week 16, the semifinal round, most likely, of your 2022 fantasy football playoffs. As I said, this is going to be an early waiver wire episode, so we're recording this on Sunday evening. We've still got a half of Sunday Night Football to play and Monday Night Football, so if anything happens from that point going forward here, that might not be included in today's episode, but we are talking through the names that throughout Thursday, Saturday, and the early and late slate on Sunday, things that popped up here and have come to our attention for this upcoming week's games. As always, I will make sure to keep you guys filled in throughout the rest of the week if something changes, so make sure to check me out on Twitter at SizzleFantasy. You guys can get updates from me for my other waiver wire pickups as those come out later on there. But with that being said, let's dive into today's episode. All right, here we go. So this isn't the case for this player, but unfortunately for those of you, maybe it's your first season playing fantasy football here, this week showed us just how critical health can be to fantasy football success, because round one of the playoffs, we lost some pivotal players here for different teams at multiple positions. So we'll break that down and cover that obviously throughout today's episode, but Tyler Allgeier is the first name I want to talk through here. This is kind of a late season potential breakout player here. Now, Tyler Allgeier has some limitations as a player. A, he's not super involved in the pass game. B, he's not the most explosive rushing threat. This is a guy who actually, I believe it was his rushing touchdown. I was almost 100% sure he wasn't going to get the corner and score that touchdown, but at the end of the day, he just gets the job done. He runs really, really hard, and this Falcons offense really leaned on him today here against the Saints. He had 139 yards and a touchdown in this Week 15 matchup, followed up with Cordero Patterson's 52 yards and a touchdown on 15 touches. So the bottom line here is that this isn't a workhorse scenario for Allgeier, but what it is a potential flex play. If you're in a standard format, that's probably better, but a lot of us are playing PPR leagues. So essentially here, Allgeier is someone that at this running back position, with how thin the depth is right now, maybe you lost a Jonathan Taylor, who we're going to cover in more depth here in just a second, but if you lost a player this week or that this position group needs some help, Allgeier is definitely a name to keep in mind at 37% rostership. As I said, not looking at him to be a workhorse. This is more of a split backfield. CPAT's got his time in place, and Tyler Allgeier has his. The last couple of games here is Baltimore and Arizona in Week 16 and 17. I would think that the Arizona matchup would be the better of the two here if you're looking to start him, of course. Obviously, Baltimore's defense a bit more stingy right now. Next up here, filling in for Jonathan Taylor, we're talking some handcuff candidates here. Starting out with Zack Moss, who had 24 rushing attempts and 81 yards on the ground at 3.38 yards per carry. Not very good efficiency here, but this did appear to be the clear go-to back after JT's injury and absence from that contest. Now, if you didn't watch, I think it was literally his first touch of the game. It was a screen pass that was actually fairly successful, and he re-injured an ankle, a sprain that has been kind of an issue for him throughout the season. At least I believe it's the same ankle that he's continued to have some struggles with this year, and it's just really unfortunate. So there's now kind of the question and doubt, will we see Jonathan Taylor play football again this year, because this Colts team is pretty much eliminated from the playoffs, and this is a team that has been really struggling, especially on the offensive side of the ball all season long. So whether he misses this game simply because he can't play or the team shuts him down here, you've got Zack Moss, who I think is the next best option to fill in as that lead back for this Colts team. Now, part of his inefficiency is that Zack Moss just isn't really a great player. He is an average NFL running back at best. Part of it is also the Vikings, knowing the game script, being down 33-0 at halftime, knew exactly what was coming from the Colts offense, and that was a high volume and percentage of rushing attempts from that backfield. We'll talk through another running back in this offense that you could potentially target as well here. But for Zack Moss, there is, I would say, not too much of receiving involvement. It's a pretty low ceiling type play, more so a desperation pickup for JT owners that are really looking for that level of replacement. This is also the back that if he got a goal line opportunity, or should they get into the red zone, I should say, I would feel most confident that Zack Moss is the back that they use inside the 5-yard line. So Zack Moss here, 2% rostership. And again, one more thing, 67% of the team's offensive snap share. Again, it was super, super early injury for Jonathan Taylor, so we got almost a full game worth of sample size, which is important for context here behind some of these numbers. Deon Jackson at 7%. Now, he was the handcuff lead back, or the next man up per se, if he was in a position to be the lead back here in prior instances of Jonathan Taylor being absent from the lineup this season. Now, that is the reason he's at 7% here, just a few ticks ahead of a Zack Moss, but Deon was clearly the number 2 option. He had a 13 attempt rushing performance for 55 yards on 4.23 yards per carry. So slightly better efficiency here. I'd say Deon Jackson might be just a hair more explosive than Zack Moss, yet he played just a 32% offensive snap share. So you've got 67% for Moss, 32% for Deon Jackson. Haven't checked the numbers, but I'm guessing that lone 1% was the initial play that Jonathan Taylor played in this contest that ended up being a Vikings win and the largest comeback in NFL history. So should Moss not be available for you, or you're later in the waiver claims, toss one out there for Deon Jackson as well if you're really in a position of need here. Chuba Hubbard, talking some more running back acquisitions here. So Chuba at 39% rostership is the highest owned player yet in today's episode. Now, he didn't have a great day on the ground in this matchup against Pittsburgh. It was actually a game I was expecting them to have a fair level of competence in here, both him and D'Onta Foreman. Neither of them stepped up to the plate, especially not D'Onta Foreman. And I had actually talked about last week Foreman's role potentially shrinking after being outshined by Chuba Hubbard in a really good matchup against Seattle. And then Foreman comes out yet again this week and gets absolutely stuffed. And now you're looking at Chuba here as a guy who yet again actually made more plays happen. Now Chuba's 4 carries for 10 yards were absolutely unimpressive and unflattering, as were D'Onta Foreman's 9 yards on 10 rushing attempts. So even more awful efficiency for Foreman there. However, Chuba in the passing game did make his presence felt, 57 yards on 3 catches. So there's a chance that in week 16 here we see even more Chuba Hubbard than we've been seeing the last couple of weeks here. Overall, it's a fairly unattractive situation, but one of these two players are going to be the most useful back in this offense. And right now, it's trending towards Chuba Hubbard looking like he has the higher ceiling in terms of his overall involvement in multiple facets of the game, the run and the pass game here. And then, of course, if he's just being more efficient and getting this team more beneficial field position every time he touches the ball, I would assume they're going to increase his level of touches as the sample size continues to grow here for the Panthers offense. Chris Moore. Now let's dive into some wide receivers that we're looking to target here for week 16. So for Chris Moore at 19%, this is a guy that essentially was a hot topic last week. This is a player that a lot of people, especially in the fantasy Twitter community, as I was active in there this week, were all over Chris Moore as a flex option this week, a streamer. He didn't quite live up to expectations. However, the target numbers have been fantastic. He's averaging 10 targets per game the last 2 weeks, 11 targets in week 14 for 124 yards on 10 catches. He had 9 more targets this week against Kansas City, but just 42 yards, so not necessarily converting that into high levels of success, but he does have Tennessee in week 16 here, who have been statistically allowing a fair amount of points to opposing receivers. They're also one of the youngest secondaries in the league. They did make some incredible plays. They actually had one where I believe it was to Mike Williams in the end zone, and I want to say it was Roger McCreary, like volleyball set the ball back into play. It was headed out of bounds. He sets it back to his teammate who gets the pick. It was quite the catch, or interception rather. So anyways, talking Tennessee defense, that's Chris Moore's matchup this week. But regardless, this is more of a possession receiver here, not the most skilled player in the world. You're looking at a pretty low ceiling flex level candidate here in PPR formats going forward this season. So managing our expectations, that's kind of the name of the game for waiver wire at this point in the year, but you could get yourself a really solid contributor, especially in deeper formats or if you're starting multiple flex players every week. Marquise Goodwin. This is a really interesting one for me. So if you want to talk about a high ceiling ad at 3% rostership, Marquise Goodwin might be arguably one of my favorite pickups of the week if you're looking for some game-breaking ceiling. This guy's got wheels. That's what he's been known for throughout his NFL career. And with the unfortunate injury to Tyler Lockett, the wide receiver 2 position is now opened up for the Seattle offense. So what that means for Goodwin here is the potential for, maybe a consistent 5, 6, even 7 targets per game if you're feeling lucky here, maybe even 8 in a singular matchup. And he's made plays happen throughout the season. He has done nice things for this team. It's not like Geno Smith hasn't thrown him the ball throughout the year. And by the way, I'm not buying into Geno kind of declining significantly here down the stretch. The matchups, especially this past week on a short week against San Francisco, that's just brutal. That's the nightmare matchup right now in fantasy football. And so the 13 points are understandable there, though. For someone that's been as rock solid as Tyler Lockett, though, leaving and exiting this lineup opens up opportunity for other players. Hopefully DK Metcalf can see some benefit here. But if another player sees trickle down, Goodwin's a name to keep your eye on that is widely available at this current point in time. Now let's talk my quarterback and defensive stream of the week here. So Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers at 20% rostership. So 4 in every 5 leagues. He's going to be available for you to pick up out there. This has been the guy that I think is just the most solid distributor of the football that's widely available in leagues right now. He doesn't really have to do too much, but when they've asked him to do a lot, he's been able to do it. Now, in just 2 starts here, he's got 15-plus fantasy points in base quarterback scoring in both of those games. So he's got a pretty solid floor. He's not going to come out here and win you a lot of weeks, but especially if you're looking at, a situation where you're just in desperate need of someone, your quarterback's been underproducing, he's the weekly link on your team, and you're loaded everywhere else. Whatever the case might be, Brock Purdy definitely contributes something to the table. It sucks that Debo's not available for him right now. That's another really great weapon in space that he could be utilizing here. However, what you do have is a guy who can distribute to still George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and other playmakers that this 49ers offense has that aren't exactly household names but are very, very capable contributors. So Purdy, really solid pickup here. And then the Cleveland Browns defense. I really like streaming them for this week against the Saints offense. I'm expecting to have some regression here in this game. Now, they weren't spectacular in this matchup against Atlanta. I expected them to put up closer to 24, 28 points in this game. However, they scored just 21 in a narrow victory. They almost lost the Falcons, actually. A couple of crucial mistakes cost the Falcons that game, and crucial mistakes let the Falcons hang around a bit longer than they should have. But at the end of the day here, this Cleveland pass rush, the way that they are, this past week, especially against Baltimore, they really took the football away. They were ball hawks. They were punching balls out. Obviously, Baltimore's offense is atrocious right now, but I don't view the Saints offense as anything remotely close to a juggernaut either. Even in such a good matchup, Alvin Kamara barely produced and Chris Olave still flopped. It was Jawan Johnson being their most productive fantasy player. So there's a lot to like here. Andy Dalton often takes a lot of pressure in the pocket. Their protection hasn't been great up front. I think that there's some really solid opportunities here, especially available. You'd assume that for a waiver wire pickup, it's somewhere roughly around a 50% rostership at least, or at maximum rather, for being able to go out and target them. There's still a 25% availability here. So 1 in roughly every 2 leagues for you guys that are thinner should have them available, or at least make them a defense worth rostering here. I explained that pretty poorly, but hopefully you understood what I meant. There's a 25% gap between 50%, 25%, whatever. So at the end of the day here, I do like streaming this team and being able to use them in that pass rush, hopefully creating more turnovers against Andy Dalton, who's been pretty poor in multiple stretches of this season. So take advantage of that situation, and I will move you guys here into Week 16. So we'll have lineup advice coming this week. We'll have our tiers as always. Make sure to stay tuned for all that good stuff. If you're new around here, smash that subscribe button, like today's episode before you head on out. If you want to check out our takeaways and lessons learned from Week 15, round 1 of the fantasy football playoffs, check out our YouTube channel right now. That is up and live for you guys to take advantage of. So I will see you guys there. Peace out.